computer. Okay, I'm recording. Welcome everyone to the online project catch-up. This is week 4, and I just had 3 things that I just wanted to touch base with you about, and then we can just open it up to just a general discussion about where we're all at. So I'm going to get Sharon to talk about the second iteration of the review of learning design. So as you be aware from last trimester, we find peer review essential to keep the collaboration going and the feedback and critical feedback on the design and the instructional design of the books. So given that everybody is in at least the second or third phase of building books, is that this trimester we actually want to take a deeper dive into the review of the learning design. So I'm going to hand over to Sharon just to talk through a stage editing checklist that we would like you to interact with this trimester.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. What I'm going to show, and I'll share screen in a minute, is a checklist similar to the checklist we used for developing the books with the book editing. And this is a suggestion for the second stage checklist. Now, we've been through it internally, and so we're sort of reasonably happy with the key areas, but it's still open for discussion. So what I'm going to actually do when I share it is have it in Word. So if you guys have any feedback, we can actually sort of clarify and make changes as we go, and then it will actually go up into a common SharePoint site. The idea with the second stage editing iteration is basically that what we're trying to do now is build both, I guess, on your own interactions with students and the books and the learning materials, so that, you know, we can build in a review of how effective the books are in your own experience, so that you can sort of do that. Adjustments that are based on what you can see the students are using the books for in the learning space, and any Moodle Analytics, because we have the ability to access Moodle Analytics and see right down to how many pages the students are reading. So that's a really good way to prompt us to kind of say, you know, is this book working? Are students only reading the first 3 pages and they never go any further? Do we need to do something like take a look at that, as well as you just having an idea of what the students really need in order to successfully complete the assessments. And if you're having to provide lots of additional email support, you know, is there something we can build into the books that might answer some of those kind of questions? So that's half of this second iteration. And that, on the whole, will be driven by just the lead educators themselves, rather than doing too much book swapping. But the other part we wanted to look at with the second stage is very specifically the videos you're producing. That's the welcome videos, that's any instructional videos that you've embedded in the books, and that's the videos that you do to support the assessments. And we wanted to just have a little look at the actual design of those particular videos and whether that needed to go through an editing process. So in the first stage, it was all about, let's please just get some up. And there are some really great ones, and there are some that probably could do with a refresh. So this is going, well, what we're going to concentrate on in this second stage is looking at how we're doing the video presentation to students, because we do know that they have quite high viewer rates. So we do want, you know, that to work very well, and even stuff from other institutions tells us that students do, on the whole, click on videos for information. And I guess the other thing I'd sort of add to that is our competitors. So particularly I know TAFE New South Wales took its courses online through Open, and when they did their videos, they did full studio setup. Now, we're not doing full studio setup, but there's a bar that we have to reach that's somewhere between what we can do with a little laptop and what our competitors are doing with full lighting camera, that sort of thing. So that what it means is that it matters that our videos look professionally produced and professional enough to convey to the students that this has had some thought put into it. So what I've got here, and I'll just share screen, is this 4-page document. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this first page because you can read it. It's partly what I've just talked through then, but it's really to talk about those two key elements. This is firstly looking at the video editing, and this is the part that we would like you to have the buddy swap on when you look at each other's and just give a little bit of feedback. And the great thing is that Learning and Teaching have already put up a whole lot of resources for us. I know most of you have seen the resources, so I'm really giving these as an additional go back and have a look if it helps you. But Jonathan Haval has done a fabulous one on just how you can even do a little rolling script and, you know, blue tack your iPhone up so you can see it, and just getting the camera angles right so that you're looking straight at it rather than looking down, which we tend to do with laptops. So just a whole lot of little tips around that kind of stuff, which makes a real difference to how students actually see it. And just a couple of other, like there's one where one of the higher ed groups have just put up some of their welcome videos, so just giving us some more reference points, so it's fairly well supported. And then the revision book editing. But what I'm going to just quickly scroll through is to this. So there, that's where we'll pick up. But just to quickly check in with anything I've said so far, does anyone have any questions about that? No? Okay, let's just dive in, and please just jump in if you have any questions or any concerns. Like if you actually go, oh, you know, I'd be a bit uncomfortable with somebody asking me that, please tell us. You know, this is meant to be a helpful collaborative tool rather than kind of like big black marks on a page and, you know, the dark stamp on your record forever. We know these are evolving documents, and the video is just another part of that evolution.
Sharon, can you bring it up a little bit bigger?
Absolutely. Is that better to see there? Or do we need it bigger again?
Just a little bit bigger.
Okay.
Yep, that's great.
Okay. Now, the other thing for me is this has been fun because you probably don't all know this. I used to be a TV producer. So for me, like how to make videos is kind of, in a way, my old bread and butter work. And it was kind of really just thinking about what engages people. And what we know with video production, that what engages people is, number one, people. People love to see people. So we're already doing that. So we're already ahead of the game. But we also want to see people really well. We want to see them clearly. We want to see their faces, you know, well lit, so that if you know, the number of hotel rooms I have rigged with lamps and stuff to make them look really professional, like cozy homes, I can't begin to tell you. But it's things like thinking about what's the background look like? You know, does it look like a professional? It doesn't have to look like you're in a classroom, but does it look like it could be in a professional environment? Is the lighting, if your face looks dark in what you've recorded, you need to get a light in front of your face, and it can be any bedside table lamp, it really doesn't matter, but just getting some light on the face, all of those little things. So in this checklist, you'll see those elements. But the biggest thing is actually trying to form a connection with the student through a story of connecting who you are to who they are. And the welcome videos you guys have done have mostly been fantastic for that. So but it's really emphasizing that, you know, have you introduced who you are? Have you explained what you know from your practice? Because that's actually the huge value students are getting tuning into you, is that you've done this, you've been in the trenches, and the more stories we put in, the better. And I know, you know, people in the room have been doing that, but it's kind of just, that's part of the check. Have you said who you are, what you do? Have you welcomed the students to the space? Then have you told them why they should care about watching this video? So this third one is really the why do you care question. And it's like, are you actually saying what they're going to get out of watching this video? With the welcome one, have you also taught about the main way that the subject's going to be taught and the main way even that it's going to be assessed. In this subject, you're going to be doing heaps of role plays because you're practicing what it's like to work with a traumatised client, and the more practice you get with that, the better. Or, you know, guess what? In this subject, you're going to watch lots and lots of films because we want you to immerse yourself in the world, all these different worlds that the different young people you're working with may have come from. So just giving them an idea of what to expect. Ask, is it logical, rather than sort of feeling like just chucking ideas down as we're having them. And 6 minutes or less now, this is a huge target we're giving you. And the reason we're giving you that target, and you've probably heard it before, but it's because all our analytics from learning and teaching tell us that after 6 minutes, students tend to stop watching. Now, there can be a reason to go on, and I've produced videos for the space, and goodness knows I have broken this rule plenty of times. If you have a good reason to push it past 6 minutes because it's just a complex thing that requires that, that's fine. But you need to have that really good reason and sufficient material to make it worthwhile the student staying with you in the space. So that's that first set. Do we have any questions or comments? And this is literally at first looking at the introductory videos. Welcome to the subject videos. Do you have any questions or comments just about the content side of it? No? Cool. Okay, the next bit is the audio and visual. This is going to appear every time we have a checklist off the video stuff, so it's the same checklist. Firstly, much as I've just rabbited on about pictures, what actually matters even more is sound and sound quality. So it's all that stuff that most of you are doing. Have you recorded it in a quiet room, and have you been sufficiently close to the microphone that it sounds clear to the student? If it's echoey and hard to hear, students tune out very quickly and they just go, not worth the bother. It's one reason that it's actually quite hard for us to video lectures that occur, because even recording in a classroom with a teacher walking around talking to students, sound is often really bad, and it's too hard. If the student's having to work, they don't do it. So is the sound clear? Then the second one, does the teacher look professional in the presentation, and does the background of the video appear like a professional setting? And that comes back to no, we're not doing full studio setups, but is what the teacher wearing, does that look like the sort of outfit they would wear when they go to a meeting with a client? That's really the thing. It doesn't have to be the full suit. But what would you wear professionally? That will actually matter for what the students see. What's behind you in the background? Don't mind if it's a bookcase. If it's your 2-year-old having a fight with your 4-year-old, not a good look. We haven't had that. That's a worst case scenario. But it needs to not look like the family home. It needs to have something that looks professional enough. Is the image a good quality image? Is the lighting good? Is the teacher's face well lit? Does everything around that just look good enough? That sort of thing. If you use any diagrams, charts or illustrations, if you share a PowerPoint for part of the video, for all the video, are they really clear and easy to understand? You know, does it look like a good production? And this last one, does the first frame of the video present an appropriate picture as a frozen image? You possibly don't know this, but the first frame of the video freezes, and that's what the students click on. And we've had some doozies with people starting out like, ugh, ooh. And we have to actually have that opening frame as just being a smiling, friendly face. It's an old sales trick. It's an old work on the telephone trick. Smile first before you start talking. It's going to actually also work for this as well. So that's our second part of the checklist. Do you have any comments or questions about any of that?
I've just got one comment. It's really helpful, given that we have very basic setups for our videos, that these kind of tips just turn your iPhone into a very professional tool, just by taking a step back as well, because our laptop cameras and our phone cameras are wide angle. So if we are too close to the frame, and you'll see in John's video, he's actually standing, you see half of him in a room, which actually is much more attractive for us, because the worst angle to photograph somebody is down low and wide angle, and that's how laptops record us. So that's why I actually sit my recorder up on a box as well, so that the laptop, as Sharon was saying, is not looking up my nose. So if you look like Laura, it doesn't matter what angle you shoot from. No, but you know, for people like myself with very broad faces, we've just got to use every technique to flatter the facial structure. So that's great tips so far, Sharon.
Cool, that sounds good. And look, I've just added that. Do you look straight forward in the framing rather than looking down? Would that cover it? Or do we want to have a step back as well? Because I'll just put them in. And you can just, it's literally a case of going yes, no, or, you know what, maybe on this particular video, could you re-record it with the computer propped up a bit higher? Something like that.
I mean,
something
this checklist is separate to a guide, and I'd actually like to put this video into our space as some tips and tricks to doing videos, because they're very small changes that make a very big difference for students. So, you know, when Sharon talks about the frozen image, remember that that frozen frame is what students see all the time. So they're always going to associate you with that first frozen image up in the welcome video. So if we just start the video with, then it's going to set up a frame that is with the students for 12 weeks.
What I might do is just scroll down very briefly the other checklist. So I'm looking at checklist for assessment support videos, and then there'll just be a checklist for content. That it's almost exactly the same. The only thing, again, with the assessment one is, are you selling it? You're basically doing a sell job. The reason that you will watch this video is that I'm going to explain assessment one and tell you everything you need to know to pass. That sort of, be really clear with them why they would bother. And then it's really exactly the same other key content knowledges and practices the skill that the student needs to demonstrate outlined in the video, and other performance criteria in the rubric clearly explained. So that could include actually doing a share with a PowerPoint slide, or a share of the book at some point in it. Is the key performance mode of the assessment made clear? For instance, are you role-playing this, or are you doing this as a presentation or a report? And again, is the video 6 minutes or less? Is there any comment on that in terms of even the videos you've already produced? Are there any things that you think we should also add that people should be aware of? Okay, so the audio and visual, it's the same checklist. Oh yes, Laura, did you have a question there?
I just wanted to ask, with the books, because I suppose there might be, I mean, ideally not, but there might be other teachers that are going to facilitate that unit at a later date, or we swap or something like that. So when I've been creating videos within the actual content, I haven't been in a video of myself. I've just had like a PowerPoint or the information in the background. I've not had my name, you know, I've just not had a video at all and just my voice. Because I just thought, it might be false advertising later on or something like that. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I actually think that's a really good point. I mean, Kristen, what are your thoughts? But I actually think having a slightly more generic one for anything embedded in a book is not a bad idea. The books are endlessly editable. I mean, a teacher can always, if they take over a subject, may want to substitute a couple of videos. Certainly the welcome video would have to change anyway. But I do think that's a nice thought of the generic.
The welcome video is very important that we don't have to change it.
Okay.
If we have a new educator coming in, when you're talking, like I often say that when we were doing welcome videos, I did 7 out of our 14 subjects. And it's not because I taught them, it's because it was a generic welcome. And even if you are stating your experience, if you're stating your experience, that's just a snapshot into one of our educators, the kind of experience that you have. So when we started out in community services, they were very personalised. You know, I'm going to take you through this space, and that would be false advertising, because we've now brought on campus and online together for community services. So we always want to keep online and face-to-face together in the future. So whenever you make a welcome video, that's why we're sort of saying if somebody takes over your subject or they're assessing for that subject, they want to have that welcome video there ready. They don't want to reinvent the wheel. And that's why John is talking about a script to really plan what you're going to say, and to introduce the subject as if you were one of 12 educators that deliver that, or somebody that is not even delivering it. So, you know, it's basically a welcome video to the subject, not to the educator. Sorry, I muted you, Sharon.
No, that's all right. I know there's some chatter in the background. I'm sorry.
Tell them to be quiet.
I know, productive officers. It's awful. The last one, again, is the content or practice demonstration video, and these are definitely embedded in the books. So, again, it's the same thing. Are the key points stated at the start? Are the key elements covered sufficiently and elaborated so that students can proceed with the next learning element? Is the rationale for watching the video clear, and is the video less than 6 minutes? So, again, similar kind of checklist. So that is kind of that main bit. So before I move on to the book editing bit, is there any other things people would like to discuss just with the video itself? And what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to stop the share of this so we can go back to the full. So that's Laura, Julie, or Carola particularly, or Kristen. Do you have anything you'd like to add just with videos? Sorry, Carola, I can't hear you there.
No, it's good. It's pretty clear, pretty straightforward. Yes, I think I have to redo some of mine.
Look, that's the thing. But the thing is, the videos, it's editing just like you'd edit a book anyway. That's the thing. I mean, I think they're weird. Look, even for me, who worked in the industry for a long time, I worked behind the camera. I don't like being face to face. I find, you know, it's an art to learning script writing, and it's just like it was an art to learning book writing.
Well, what I find with the videos is because I got nobody to talk to. So, and I'm terribly, and when I did my videos, I did it from my phone, and I had to have the light on my phone because otherwise my face was too dark. So I had a lamp there, and I was in the room, I had a white wall, but of course the light was blinding my eyes. So I'm trying to sort of look in the camera, but then it's blinding. So I'm just end up looking everywhere, trying to rest my eyes. That's the one thing. And because I got nobody there I'm talking to, and I got that sort of script that I'm not trying to look at. And it's really stilted. Like I looked at it after, I think I did about over 20 takes. And in the end, I got so tired of it. And I thought, well, we'll have to do. It's the best of the worst. And then I just put that one up. But that's what I find really difficult. As soon as I got students, I don't think about, I just talk to the person. But I got nobody. And I'm looking at the wall and I'm imagining these students. And I find it so difficult. And I'm so self-conscious. And when I look at them afterwards, I go, oh my God, it's just awful. So, but
which I've seen yours, they're really good. But
really?
Yeah, I think you've done some really nice ones. I mean, there's lots. I think it is practice, and I also, it is weird to talk into space. One thing when when I was filming, like in TV, if people found any of that weird, we would actually put someone behind the camera and say, we'll talk to them. And because the role I had, it was often me. So there's nothing wrong with dragging, a passing family member or friend in, just to stand behind your computer to say, look, it just makes it easier for me to explain it if somebody is here.
I did that with my partner, but he heard that spiel for about 20 times and he kept smiling. and it was really good, but and it still didn't feel, because I wasn't talking. I was still doing a role play thing rather than talking. So I think you say it's practice, and it's this kind of thing. I can't stand listening to my recordings either. Like if I do a recording, I just think I got the worst voice, and then I realize I have such a strong accent. I don't notice it. Holy shit! Oh my god! And I didn't realize I have such an accent, and then I become really conscious about how I talk. It's just so weird.
Yeah, look, it is how it is, and like I said, we are always our own worst critics. And the funny thing is, face to face with students, we never even consider any of this. And this is essentially exactly the same as face to face in the way the student receives it. It's just that everyone feels weird watching themselves on camera. I feel weird watching myself on camera. I have tried to photograph Kristen, and she hides, and she's a photographer.
That's why I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
I was at the right end of the camera.
That's it.
Yeah, sounds. Before I move, so is everyone happy with moving on to just looking at the books? Thank you. Okay, let me share screen again. I'm just going to scroll down here. So, with the checklist for books, some of it is a recap of the checklist we had before. So, but it's in much more shortened form. So, by now, this stuff will be largely in the book. So it's just a quick, are the lesson objectives for this particular book clear on the first page, including key knowledge and practice skills? Is the information being presented well curated and from authentic, valid and reliable sources? And other links to the week's content, to the assessment tasks throughout the book. Let me reword that so it's slightly better. So it's really just a checklist of the big picture stuff. But then this is the second bit that starts becoming important. The learning analytics. Have the students accessed the book and read through all the pages? What has the student feedback been on this resource? So what do we know now about how the students are treating these particular books? So even if you're looking, 1 or 2 weeks back, your week 3, let's go check the week 1 book and see what have the students actually used, that sort of thing. Have you provided additional information to students to explain resources or elaborate key ideas? And that the reason that might become important is just maybe a bit of extra information need to go into part of a book, or does some information need to come out because there was so much there the students didn't know what was important to focus on, which can sometimes deletion can still be as important as addition with this kind of stuff. And then have the students been able to fulfill the key assessment task requirements using the book information, or did you have to still do a lot? With some stuff it's practice and elaboration anyway. That's fine, that's why we have the Zoom sessions. But if the students really couldn't crack something, maybe it's a case of needing to give them a more workshopped example through a book. With the learning analytics, is there anything you guys, from your experience with the books, would add into that?
Can you just tell me where you look at the learning analytics?
Kristen, you might be the one better able to do that, because I know I can, in the Moodle space, as I see it as the coordinator, I can look in, and what we might do is actually do a separate recording, a separate short recording, and maybe next session we do it. Kristen, do you think where you actually go through specifically on the learning analytics, would that make sense?
Yes, I presume somebody would ask that question because we haven't gone over how to unpack the reports coming out of Moodle. I recently spent some time with John and Christina presenting online refresh project at Moodle Moot, and I realised after we had spoken about the success of this program and the development and building capacity within our academic team that we haven't really been able to show you how to unpack the success of the learning design through the analytics. And one of the main reasons why we went with books is that you can gain analytics on every page as opposed to a site in general. So I am actually going to get John and Christina to do a short video, or preferably, now that we've got 3 sessions over a fortnightly schedule, that they'll actually come in and you can ask them questions about how to do that. I could show you, they've actually shown me, for example, Laura's and Brianna's space post rollout of the books, but we haven't actually allowed you to actually, where do you go first? And, you know, what are you actually seeing here? So, yeah, I've just written that down as an action item, and each one of these meetings, every week we'll have a theme that will become recordings within the Vet Best Practice space. So that was a very long-winded answer to that question.
Nope, that's all good. The next bit that I just wanted to look at is this idea that we're calling just-in-time knowledge check. So it's really asking you to think about the way the knowledge is being presented throughout the books. And the just-in-time knowledge is, are the students getting the knowledge at the right time? So first of all, has the content been sufficiently chunked down for students to grasp the key points readily? I know when I've gone through some of the books, what I've noticed is still maybe more information than the students need on some of the pages. So it's saying, well, have you got enough scaffolding? Have you broken it down into enough bits? And have you maybe put too much in, and could you just refer some of this off to a secondary reading if students want to pursue it? And the interested students will pursue it, but mostly the students are essentially flicking through the book pages. So it's like, can they tell at a glance that they will be able to learn what they need on this page? So it's a secondary edit kind of thing. Is the content all the content necessary, or could some be reduced? There we are. Is the book size 10 pages or less? If not, are there specific design reasons? Now, sometimes some educators have got longer books, but it's because they've really chunked the content down, and that's fine. Like if the students are, you know, there's a couple that are putting, you know, really just a video and a couple of comments, and then turn the next page. So their books are longer just because they have the pages themselves have got relatively small content. That's fine. That's fine. It's when we have really dense books that are still running over 10 pages and the students are still scrolling down for information. And then you go, well, stuff could come out. Maybe you've got just a little too much going on in this content. Occasionally there'll be a really valid reason. Sometimes some things just need a lot of elaboration. But it's like, if you do that, you need to have a really strong intent. Is the mode of delivery for each page, for instance, video, PowerPoint, graph, or reading, the best way to convey that content, knowledge, or practice skill? Or, you know, have you used a video when a checklist would be better, or vice versa? Have you got a whole lot of content when there's actually a perfect little video out there that explains that? And it's kind of like, pick one, and then for further information, click on this other link. And finally, is the content linked directly to specific assessment tasks? So it is prompting that question. With that just-in-time knowledge checklist, do you guys have any feedback on what you think? You know, is that a good list, or is there anything you would add, or you'd like a little bit more information?
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in with a comment or a question. Are you all familiar with the concept of just-in-time content? No?
Not really.
Okay, so traditionally, when we studied qualifications, especially my experience, when I studied a very long time ago for my first vocation, which was photography, we were delivered a lot of just in case knowledge. So it really held me in good stead for my career in photography, but it actually, the assessments weren't driving the learning. We were just taught a whole lot of stuff that really wasn't relevant to the outcomes that we required at that time. So traditionally, you know, an educator would get up in front of a class and spill, you know, all their knowledge about a particular subject, and then you would have to dive into it and interpret it in your own time to actually do the assessment. So with our rigorous training packages, we have to deliver just-in-time content, and that means we are delivering content just in time for them to tick off that part of the assessment. So there's no point even delivering it 2 weeks after the point as just in case knowledge. We have to directly relate it to the assessment outcome. So when we actually provide that template in the first page of every book, the linkage to the assessment is vital for that week's topic. So we know that everything that we're delivering during that week has an outcome attached to it. So we are going to teach them about interpersonal skills before they actually practice it. I mean, I'm just using a really poor example because I know nothing about, you know, the different skill sets gained. But if we have just in case knowledge, that is something that will help the student maybe later. Or, as Sharon intimated, it may be a secondary reading. It may be a further reading if the student wants to dive into that topic. And a good example of this is when I taught optics, I taught it and I told them where all the information was to learn about the Hubble telescope and all this really interesting facts about optics because I'm a physics nerd. But basically, the crux of the class was when you purchase a lens, what do you have to look out for? So the student would prick up their ears about the certain topics that I was explaining to them so they could purchase a lens and not be a buyer beware. So when we say just in time, are we delivering it just in time for them to achieve that assessment item? And why I'm very passionate about this is because you are at the core of designing content so a student can actually tackle the content that you have put up there and then feel confident to achieve the assessment, or, as Sharon was saying, know exactly where to find that content to do the assessment. And that's it.
Cool, thank you, Kristen. Look, we're nearly done. So the last one is actually partly what comes in with Erin's work as well. The first, and this is really copy editing, so this is going to be the ongoing book maintenance work. Firstly, are all the links working? We actually do need to check them every single trimester. And part of Erin's job is making sure all the spaces are up and running, and this is where we really need, you know, the lead teachers to be supporting her with that and making sure all the links are current, because links drop out, as you know. And so it's something that just sort of has to have a check. Are the references current and acknowledged? So going back through, making sure any documents you've referenced or any charts that you've used are actually fully referenced at the end of the book. And, you know, as we go forward, I know, you know, I've got some readings in youth work that are quite old by now, and unfortunately the sector hasn't produced anything more recent, so it's still current. But as soon as the sector does produce a more recent document, the more recent one will go up. So it's having a think about that. Oh, there you go, all the copyright of images. Have we really double checked that we've used things that are shareable, or if we're referencing something out of any kind of publication, that we acknowledge the publication. Have you checked the spelling? And that, oh, actually, I'll just jump back one quick thing to copyright, and I've spelled it wrong there, but one of the things we have in here that we have to be very careful of is that ACAP has copyright restrictions college-wide. So some of the things that affects for us is if we use a chapter out of a textbook as a reading, and that's certainly a valid thing for us to do, if someone from higher ed has used it on one course and someone else from another faculty in higher ed has used that same textbook, we can end up falling foul of those copyright restrictions. So we have to be really careful that we document everything, because we then send it to the library to check. So there's a reason behind this, what it sort of feels like a lot of documentation of our references, is that, you know, the government can come in and audit, or the Publishers Association can audit how we're using some of these resources, and we have to be careful never to exceed the 10%, not just on one course, but college-wide. Secondly, have you checked the spelling, all of the agencies' names? And I'm really suggesting, and I know a couple of you have done this, is community service terminology glossed. It can be in actually producing a glossary on the site, which I think is actually a really good idea. But it's always explaining, even if you're using a government department that's common knowledge, or an area of practice that for you is common knowledge, if it's a technical term, make sure we keep giving the students the definition, at least the first time they see that word in the book, because we can't assume that they have absorbed it all from previous courses or around us. And certainly in the community services sector, I don't know about counselling so much, but in the community services sector, it's a nightmare for acronyms and technical talk that takes you quite a long time to develop the language for. So we just have to always make sure that we don't inadvertently give students some terms they're not going to instantly understand. Have you checked for correct grammar and punctuation? And have you checked the formatting and style for adherence to the style guide? And that's even things like the fonts and the layout and design that we've settled on, just so making sure that's all standard. And that's the checklist. So do you have any other questions or comments?
So in terms of this checklist, one other thing that we're going to introduce this trimester is it's really important for us as a team to monitor which class spaces have been reviewed. So when you are performing this checklist with your buddy, you will need to send it to us so that we can actually enter it in as part of our continuous improvement. So if, say, for example, Sharon wants to go in and do an educator's, do a checklist for an educator, we can actually not go over the same book when you've already been given that guidance or that feedback. It's also the ability for us to make sure that all the people in the buddy arrangement are getting, support from the other buddy. And I was proposing 4 this trimester, but because we're starting late again, I would only require that you do 3 this trimester and just space it out so that you're not doing them all at the end and taking your time. Now, one of the questions before about this editing checklist is, we know you have a lot on your plate, and it's been a huge learning curve, but if you are able to spend 15 minutes briefly going through this checklist, this will make a wealth of difference for your buddy to actually be able to have another pair of eyes on 3 of their books. So You may see it as quite a lengthy checklist, but it is a checklist in essence. And if you can provide any more detail on particular points, that'd be great. Or your buddy can ask for clarification on any points. But I think it's more important that you actually get this done rather than writing an essay against every point. So does that seem achievable to you in the buddy arrangement this trimester, that you review 3 books following this? I'm seeing nods. Okay. And always get back to us if you want to give us feedback that it's not appropriate, certain sections. Once you start getting familiar with it, this is a living document and it's peer review. It's not a performance review. It enables us all as peers to continue to collaborate with each other in this community of learning. Because one thing that came out of me summarising what has been achieved in this project was interviewing 3 or 4 or 5 in the end educators about their experience. And what came through in everybody's experience is that you've actually grown through this process. And, you know, the wonderful thing is that you have become, outside of ACAP, a highly employable educator with subject matter expertise, learning design, instructional design. And, you know, that makes me really grateful that we've brought you along for a professional development that you've driven very much yourselves. So this is why it's worthwhile just to keep this collaboration going with your buddies.
Kristen, will we get a buddy list again?
That was the second item that I had. So can I just pull up the buddy list for you? There was just some last minute changes that I wanted to just double check before I issue the buddy list, because I don't like issuing it and then changing it. So let me just share my screen and I will pull up the buddy list. And I also just had one request from you, and Julie was saying that she'd like to get across this. I noticed that none of you have actually put in your bid for the icons. So can I just get you to spend 5 minutes, go into the instructional design section of the VET Best Practice, click on the icon set survey, and just make a selection of which icons appeal to you as a set. So it's just a line. You just have to choose one of those numbers as part of the survey. We've received, if we look, we've received 5 online responses, and I've been asking around the staff, but I really want your input because we're going to implement these across all subjects and possibly to the wider ACAP community as well. So if we go back to the buddy list, I've got it. No, just one moment. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to find it and then put it up on the screen. So we only have 8 minutes before finishing up. So if you guys want to just raise anything, that could be great.
As people find the book writing, now that you're back into the second, well, I know, Laura, you're doing stuff for me new, but how are you going with the second trimester of the books so far?
I'll just start talking, get the ball rolling. So we're probably up to, or I'm up to probably my 4th time of teaching a particular unit. But it's funny, I'm still updating as I go, and I'm still getting it's kind of more, as opposed to changing things, I'm probably adding a little bit more. And maybe, yeah, just tweaking. Like, I'm looking at some of my stuff I created 4 trimesters ago, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't like the look of that anymore. That doesn't look right, or, you know, I'm formatting. So it's probably more design stuff, I think, that I'm interested in. Yeah, and it's helpful to be doing it again in a fresh capacity in youth work, because, yeah, I feel a lot more informed than I did when I first started 4 trimesters ago. So, yeah.
Oh, we definitely benefit from your experience. So it's interesting. Not you're not having to be learning on the hop, that you can sort of, I guess, go straight into content and modes and thinking through the design much more clearly, which is great for us. How about you, Carola? How are you finding rolling the books out, I guess?
I haven't really done a lot of editing in the books, because I wasn't sure, since they're live, to make a huge amount of changes. The feedback I've been getting from some students, my subject is a bit difficult. The students haven't engaged terribly well, and I think partly, and that's always ever since the new diploma with crisis